Most of us operate with a constant, high-decibel background hum. Between the daily commute, the dense crowds, and the endless stream of notifications demanding our attention, the modern nervous system rarely gets a chance to downshift. That state of high alert takes a measurable toll on our cognition. Unfortunately, booking a standard 3-day weekend at a crowded resort doesn't actually lower your cortisol levels. You are simply taking your exhaustion to a different location. To reset your psychological baseline, your brain requires a complete environmental vacuum. Instead, it needs the physical removal of the digital tether that keeps you endlessly scrolling through external stimuli. Escaping this level of burnout means you cannot power off your phone for a few hours. You have to replace the ambient noise with a highly structured framework designed specifically for stillness. That is the engineering behind the Ekatattva Marg Sadhana, Aadi Kailash Yoga Retreat. Running October 17th to 25th, this 9-day route transitions participants from Haldwani into the remote Himalayas. Focused on introspection, the group is strictly capped at 15 people, guaranteeing personalized guidance. There is also one mandatory condition for joining: a total digital detox. Once the trek begins, participants have zero access to the internet, forcing them to engage exclusively with their immediate surroundings. This 9-day restriction provides a deliberate clearing of the mental cache, the space required before beginning the physical and internal ascent. The physical journey begins in Haldwani. This town acts as a geographic border, where the dense populations of the plains are left behind as the elevation starts to rise. The first critical stop is Kasar Devi. In the framework of the retreat, this location represents the earth element, the phase where the physical body must anchor itself. This specific diagram illustrates a unique scientific anomaly found here. The ridge sits on the Van Allen belt, exposing the area to a concentrated geomagnetic field that has historically drawn meditators seeking an environment that naturally steadies the nervous system. To further anchor themselves, the group shifts entirely to a local Kumawani diet, relying on regional foods that support physical endurance at altitude. Before seeking total isolation, the group spends time engaging directly with local villagers. It creates a stark contrast to anonymous city living, requiring participants to be fully present with the community around them. Securing this biological and social footing is required. You have to anchor the physical body to the local earth before asking the mind to handle high-altitude introspection. Once grounded, the internal work begins through the Pancha Mahabhuta methodology. This system breaks human experience down into 5 foundational elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. By isolating these elements, it gives the mind a tangible framework to follow. The mechanic is straightforward. Each day of the trek is dedicated entirely to a single element. By hyper-focusing on one concept for 24 hours, the brain systematically strips away outside distractions. During the day, physical practices are tailored to that specific focus, utilizing eco-yoga mats to engage the body in motions that reflect the element of the day. In the evening, the discipline softens. The group gathers around a fire to learn classical music and jam on acoustic guitars, providing a space to process the day's physical and mental exertion emotionally. The Pancha Mahabhuta is applied here as a strict sequential cognitive tool. It forces a state of hyper-present awareness that is nearly impossible to maintain in a busy urban environment. The physical climax of the journey arrives at 14,000 feet, squarely in the extreme environment of the air and space elements. At this altitude, the group engages in nada yoga, a practice entirely centered around sound healing. This visualization shows the measurable effect of the practice. When the acoustic frequencies of singing bowls ring out in thin, unpolluted air, the resulting sound waves physically interact with the body, nudging chaotic, high-stress brainwaves into slow, steady rolling patterns. To maximize the impact of that sound, participants take a vow of mauna, absolute silence, during the daylight hours. Because you cannot speak, internal dialogue is forcefully channeled onto the physical pages of a mauna journal. It traps your observations on paper, instead of letting them evaporate into the digital void. This intense isolation is carefully managed. The deep introspection of the silent day is always balanced by the communal music sessions at night, ensuring the mind stays anchored to the group. Up here, the combination of a long physical trek, thin oxygen, and engineered acoustic frequencies, creates a completely distinct biological state. The usual defenses of the ego simply lack the energy to maintain themselves. By October 25th, the physical ascent concludes, and the group begins the long descent back down to the plains. Participants leave with a recorded video of their journey, but the heavier asset they carry down the mountain is the mana journal, pages filled with their own uninfluenced, uncluttered thoughts. It all ties back to the retreat's guiding Sanskrit principle, Satyam Jnanamantam Brahma. The translation states that truth is eternal and knowledge is infinite. The premise is that real clarity isn't downloaded from an external server. It rises to the surface when the mind drops perfectly still. Returning the nervous system to a baseline of stillness generally takes more than a weekend of rest. A full 9-day immersion acts as a deliberate bypass of the habits formed by years of exposure to digital noise. Sometimes, getting a clear look at your own internal truth requires stepping entirely out of the current. It requires a 9-day climb to 14,000 feet just to finally hear the sound of your own mind.